Sing the good old muffin song. Help to carry it along.
Hello and welcome to the first episode of
Muppet Title Tales 2022.
I'm Lexi.
And I'm Ayana.
Today we have a special guest, Miss Meenal, Lele, CEO, Chief Executive Officer of Lil Mixins.
Lil Mixins is a food allergen introduction solution. Her main focus is to help children overcome their allergies before they start.
Welcome, Meenal, and thank you for being a part of the Muppet Title Tale.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
What made you start Lil Mixins?
I have some family experience with food allergies, and I was pretty devastated to learn that they were all preventable, or they're largely preventable, I should say. And I've been in the medical devices field for 20 years, and one of the things I've learned over time is that when we come up with new science and new ideas, the hard part often isn't like that's not actually the solution, right? The hard part is figuring out how are people going to do it. Like if you invent a new drug but you don't have any way of anyone getting it, then that's not really useful, right? So I wanted to start the company because I realized right away that even though there was this way to prevent allergies, it was going to be really difficult for parents to do.
You attended the University of Pennsylvania to earn a degree in Bachelor's of Applied Science and Chemical Engineering.
What exactly is chemical engineering?
So chemical engineering is, engineering is always, kind of the side of things where you're putting the science into practice. And so with chemical engineering, you're taking some chemistry, it's a lot less chemistry than you think actually. And it's understanding of how all these materials change, how you apply chemistry into the real world. So that's not a terribly useful example. Chemical engineering is behind how we create a lot of the foods, how we create pharmaceuticals and drugs, how we create even some materials that we use, for clothing, for paints, for everything. So all of these sorts of materials are created by chemical engineers who figure out how they actually get made and manufactured in ways that are useful. So it's kind of a really interesting field because stuff you do in chemical engineering, you interact with every single day.
Can you tell us how your education helped you develop Lil Mixins solution?
Yeah, actually, interestingly, after I went to college, I didn't go and directly work as a chemical engineer. What I did is I did a lot of other kind of science related jobs, but this job actually uses more of my chemical engineering degree than anything. And so as I said earlier, food science, figuring out how to make foods is actually part of chemical engineering. And you wouldn't think that, right? Because if you bake a cake at home, do you ever notice how if you bake a cake or something like that, after a couple days, the cake starts to like get gooey, or if you leave it on the counter, then the cake gets all messed up. Maybe it tastes bad. Maybe there's, the icing gets crunchy. So when you buy a cake from a store, it can't do that, right? They have to make sure that 3 or 4 days after you buy it, it still looks good and it tastes good, right? So there's a lot of chemical engineering that goes into figuring out what are the ingredients that are going to keep the icing soft and fresh and the cake nice and spongy and things like that. And that's all food science. So that's really where with Lil Mixins, we had to figure out how to take these foods that babies can't eat and turn them into foods that were safe for babies and also would be what they call shelf stable, meaning they won't get bacteria grown on them. Nothing bad will happen to them. And so that was just actually a lot of chemical engineering, understanding what are the processes and things we can do to make that happen.
So what exactly does a CEO do?
This is a great question. If I'm totally honest, when every job you have as an adult, you're figuring it out as you go. Right? I don't think there's any perfect answer to what a CEO does. And the role is supposed to be kind of the leader of that company. but every CEO I've seen brings their own background. Some CEOs are more involved in the science side, some CEOs are more involved in the sales side. Some CEOs are really good people leaders, and they don't get involved in the business so much of making sure all their employees and all the people that work at the company have everything they need so that they can do their jobs well. So the CEO job can be really different every single day also. The one thing I want you to know is that every job can be like that. I think every job doesn't have to be, there isn't like a perfect box it fits into. And a lot of what you do on a day-to-day basis is up to the person and how many different kinds of things they want to do.
Did you study business, and how did you learn to take on the duties of a CEO?
So at Penn, at my undergrad, I did get a degree as well, an undergraduate degree in business, which is helpful. But it's sort of the same thing that you all are going through, right? Is you learn theory in school. They teach you a lot about the way to think about things, but how you actually do that is very different. And so I would say I learned more by being at other companies. So I knew I eventually wanted to do my own company. And so I actually worked at other small companies, and I talked to the CEOs there and the leaders there to understand what is their job? How are they doing? When they make mistakes, how do they know when they made mistakes? What do they do to fix those mistakes? So that's another important thing to know, is that most of the stuff you do as an adult, you'll actually learn. They say it's called learning on the job, right? You don't learn it in school exactly. You learn it on the job as you're doing it. And so I think that's exciting, because there's only so many things you can learn in school, but there's way more stuff out there.
Can Little Mixins be for every age?
I mean, foods that are baby foods, I guess you could go eat some baby food if you wanted to, but they're really made for babies, right? So same with Little Mixins. It's really intended for babies who are 4 months to 12 months old. But if you, maybe if you're losing all your teeth because they're falling out and you need to eat something really, really soft, you could eat Little Mixins too.
You graduated from Wharton School of Business and the University of Pennsylvania in 2005. How did you manage attending 2 universities and earning 2 degrees at the same time?
Well, when I was there, it's not actually attending 2 universities. It's the University of Pennsylvania, and within the University of Pennsylvania, they have multiple colleges, and lots of people do dual degrees. A lot of people decide that they don't want to just study one thing; they want to take 2 things and combine them. But so that's basically what I did. There was a program there called the Management and Technology Program, where you had to do an engineering degree and a business degree undergrad, and they helped you, but it was just a lot of classes and a lot of studying and not so much sleeping.
How long have you been working with Lil Mixins, and why did you stick with it?
So I started thinking about the company in 2016. So this summer it'll be 5 years, but I didn't actually start working on it. I did some work on it, while I had another job, but then I started doing this as my full-time job in 2019. And I think when you get an idea that really speaks to you and excites you, I mentioned before that your jobs can be kind of whatever you want them to be often. And that's not true of every job, but a lot of jobs. And I think that it's much easier, just like school, just like everything's just a lot of work, right? At the end of the day, everything's a lot of work. So it's easier to do the work when you're having fun, right? And you probably know that too, right? If you have to clean your house or clean your room or something, but you can dance and sing at the same time, it's more fun. And so it's the same thing. Like if you can do work that you really care about, or that makes you happy to get back to your desk every single day, then it's still a lot of work, right? It's still a lot of nonsense, but it's way more fun that way. And so I think it's actually pretty easy to stick with something that you enjoy.
What attracted you to the field of chemistry?
Actually, I had a really good chemistry teacher in high school, and I really liked it. I just thought chemistry was so cool because chemistry is involved. It's a science that's involved in everything. And I always liked all the sciences, but chemistry, of the school sciences you learn, like physics and chemistry and biology, chemistry is the most applicable. It's something we interact with every single day, right? We see it when we watch water evaporate, when we see how the sun heats things, when we talk about food we make, all this stuff, right? We interact with it every single day. And I thought that was really cool. And it gave me all these ideas of things that we could do. But it was really because I wanted to work on the pharmaceutical side, actually. I love the idea of working on products that could help people be less sick.
How did you start Fixing Sick podcast?
Kind of like you all did. Just one day, you decide to work on a podcast. And actually, I was doing research for a book, and as I was doing research, as you're writing a book or you're writing blog posts, you can't put everything into that, right? Otherwise, your book would be a bajillion pages long, and plus it would get kind of boring for everyone if it was just about this like one topic. But sometimes the people I was interviewing for the book had really, really interesting things to say, and I recorded those interviews mostly so that I could remember, I could write down the stuff in the book that they said correctly. And then, so what I did is, after a while, I was like, you know what? Everything these people have to say, these doctors and scientists have to say, is so interesting. I bet people would love to hear directly from them. And so I ended up, kind of going back to them and turning it into a podcast so that people could hear, not from me, but from them.
Do you have any advice for us and our podcast?
And editing is really, really hard. Get help. That's my biggest piece of advice. I think the biggest piece of advice is have fun with it. I think, like all entertainment, right? Any TV show or anything you watch, right? And music you listen to, you'll always notice that the musicians who made it or the actors who did it probably had more fun making it than you did even watching it. And I think that's the thing with everything creative. It actually matters more to the creator often than the audience. And so I just think you should have fun with it, try and meet as many interesting, cool people as you can, because they'd love to help you.
Okay, well, we are all about out of time for this episode. Can you tell your audience that they can go to listen to your podcast and read some of your work?
Yeah, sure. You can go to fixingsick.com. That's where you can download or listen to, or it's on Spotify or any of the podcast programs to listen to the podcast. You can visit lilmixins.com if anyone is interested in reading more or learning more about that. And the book will actually come out later this year in the fall, and it's called The Baby and the Biome. And it'll be published by Penguin, so you can find that probably around October, November this year.
What stores can our audience go to find Lil Mixins?
So it is sold in Target, and you can buy it there, or otherwise you can get it at Amazon, or just from our website. So I think a lot of people get stuff shipped to their houses nowadays anyway.
Thank you for being our guest today. We appreciate it. Come back anytime.
Thank you so much for having me.
That concludes this episode of the Moffat Tattletale. Be sure to follow us on social media at John Moffat Elementary and visit our website moffat.philasd.org to find out when our next episode drops. See you next episode.
Sing out loud. You don't need to feel ashamed when the Moffat School is named. You'll feel proud. Shout it, sing it, tell a song and story how it got its name. Every scholar, boy, and girl must glory in the grand old name. When you hear the school name of John Moffat, lift your hand and smile each time you doff it. It's a name filled joy and profit. January to December, all the years we will remember. Many golden hours spent at Moffitt, shining Remy's Hall of Fame. How our hearts beat when we hear its sweetest memories endear it. Moffitt is a grand old name. We'll be leaving here someday. We'll be going far away, far from here. No one knows the journey's end, but we leave behind a friend, Moffitt dear. May we meet with fair and sunny weather, may our hearts incline to the happy days we spent together just for auld lang syne. When you hear the school name of John Moffitt, lift your head and smile each time you doff it. It's an age of joy and profit. January to December, all the years we will remember. Many golden hours spent at Moffitt, shining Remy's Hall of Fame. How our hearts beat when we hear its sweetest memories endear it. Moffitt is a grand old name.